Kanupunuku kaneke titiro kingawai o tokera e hora ne mehe pipi pararo a kitu a takoto te pai. Viti viti tata tata. Viti viti tata tata. Era toa ki tua takoto te pai, takoto te pai. You all know what that means, eh? Of course you did. Ka nuku nuku ka neke neke. Move, move, move. Move to the left. Move to the right. Move forward. Move back. Titi rocking away on Tokaro. Look out over the waters. Me pipi whararo a kitua. And see the shining cuckoo. Takoto te pai. To deliver the good news. Fiti, fiti, ta, ta, ta. Keep it going. Don't stop. Takoto te pai. Takoto te pai. To deliver the good news. That's called Te Hari o Ngā Puhi. If you haven't heard it before, it was the response for Samuel Marsden in 1814 at Oi. Who, as you well know, was protected by Ruatara in the Rangi Haua. And it was a relationship between two people, a relationship of love and trust. So much so that Ruatara convinced his people, who had, by the way, just a year before, killed everybody on the board. But he convinced his people that this is different. This man is different. What he brings is different. Give him a chance. And that was their response. Te Hari o Ngā Puhi. And I think it's really poignant to start my kōrero this evening. And thank you for having me on that note of Ruatara and Samuel Marsden in 1814. And actually before, because their friendship began in Parramatta in Sydney. Ruatara was nearly dead. He'd been thrown off a whaling ship, cast aside to be left to die. Samuel Marsden heard about it, had him transported from England to Parramatta in Sydney and nursed him back to health. And in his efforts to spread the good news here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Ruatara said, I will take you. So that's the beginning of our relationship. That's the crossroad that we refer to. Ripekanga, do you know what that is? Cross. Correct. Ripekanga is the cross. And because we use it all the time in our liturgies.
E toa mātou mata I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tae mai tō rangatiratanga, kia me te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua. Kia rite anō ki tō te rangi, ho mai kia mātou ai nei, e taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā.
Kia mato
We've all travelled this journey of the three tikanga model that was shaped and formed in the late 80s and set in concrete, as it were, in 1992. The purpose of the design of the three tikanga model and the way it has worked out, I think it's depending on who you ask, your answer may vary in quite a different way. There are advantages and disadvantages to our three tikanga model. Just to give you just a little context, I was in Taitokero with Piho Pakito for many, many years as his chaplain, as an educator and ministry formation teacher. I did all my studies through Te Pihopatanga or Aotearoa and later at St John's College and Otago University. I currently serve in the Auckland Diocese as the priest in charge out at St Matthew's in Helensville, Te Awaroa, and Kaukapakapa at All Saints. So that's with the Auckland Diocese. I held a role for many years as the operations manager of the Provincial General Synod Office. Just to give you a little bit of an insight into perhaps some of the things you think, oh gosh, where on earth did you get that information from? I'm well travelled. And so the advantages and disadvantages that we've had are varied. The ways of making our partnership more effective in the future has been on the lips of many of us. And when we talk about our three tikanga model, we have to go back in time, as we did with Kānukunuku. Those historical moments that led to why we thought it was best to have a three tikanga model in the first place. Some of you may have been there. Some of us weren't. Do any of you know why Māori were not at the first signing of the Constitution of General Synod in 1857 at St Stephen's, not here, in Parnell? Does anyone know why Māori wasn't there?
Well, there wasn't Maori priests.
No, we're talking, 1928 was the first consecrated bishop.
So there weren't any priests.
But no, that's not the answer I'm looking for. So we don't have to be priests to sign a constitution. Māori were not invited. Yeah. As simple as that. We were not invited. Māori talk about it. Why weren't we invited? We try and guess why we weren't invited. But we definitely weren't invited. And the signing of that constitution went ahead with Bishop Selwyn in 1857. The fourth General Synod was here in Auckland in 1868. Bishop Selwyn presided over 6 bishops at the time and clerical and lay representatives. In the farewell address to him after 26 years of service in this country, the General Synod spoke how it was representative of 3 races, including the Māori Church and the Melanesian Mission, according to our website. And depending on who you ask, of course, it is very possible that you will get different versions of that recollection. But that's what's on our website currently. And Māori were not considered equal. We weren't equal enough. Rota Waitoa was the first ordained priest in 1893. Frederick Bennett was ordained in 1897. 30 years after the claim of the church being representative of three races, when we started ordaining. 30 years after that statement was made. The idea of a Maori diocese with its own bishop was a response to the formation of the Rātana Church. Not sure if you're familiar with that. Which threatened to draw Māori away from established churches like Te Hāhi Minengai, and especially when Māori were being excommunicated from the Anglican Church for speaking Te Reo Māori. So they went to Rātana. There was a deadlock between Pakeha bishops who insisted that the first bishop of Aotearoa be Pakeha. So I probably should have warned you right at the very beginning. Some of it might sit a little uncomfortable with you, but they are facts. I haven't made them up for tonight. The eventual solution was a classic Anglican compromise, the creation of a nominal bishopric with no territorial jurisdiction. Does that make any sense to you? No? So bishops currently have dioceses. I'm just talking at the moment about an archbishop. Right. They don't have, in these days, they didn't have a territory. There were no boundaries. So currently we have, we did have Philip Richardson, who was Taranaki. We had Winston Halakua in Polynesia. Remember, Polynesia is a diocese, just like Auckland. And then you have Don Tamihere, who is the bishop in Tairāwhiti. So that's very different to the model we're talking about here now. So it was about creating a nominal bishopric with no territorial jurisdiction. On the 2nd of December 1928, Frederick Bennett was consecrated as Bishop of Aotearoa with no territorial right. We're just going through that. But as an assistant to the Bishop of Waiapu. So it didn't quite roll out quite the way that it had been worded. And he ministered to Māori throughout the country under license from the diocesan bishops. So he was a suffragan. Many of whom, so he was under diocesan bishops, many of whom opposed this arrangement. This awkward system lasted until 1978. 50 years. When the Archbishop of New Zealand took over the licensing process. The Bishop of Aotearoa is nominated by Te Rūnanga-Nui, which is the Māori equivalent to a synod. In Tikanga Pakeha, they call it Tikanga Pakeha TPPC, which is an equivalent. Tikanga Pakeha have their own decision-making synod of all the dioceses. Te Rūnanga-Nui is the equivalent with all the amorangi. We get together in powwow. Or Te Pihopatanga o Aotearoa, but subject, this is an interesting one, the Bishop of Aotearoa, remember I'm telling you this, is nominated by Te Rūnanga-Nui at Te Pihopatanga o Aotearoa, but subject to the consent of Te Hinota Whānui General Synod. It's the only one that is, even today. The last election was in Nelson in September 2017, and that nomination was improved by General Synod in March 2018. What normally happens in Tikanga Pakeha, you have a system that you just put your Archbishop in place. It doesn't require a vote from any other tikanga. So that's just a little bit of the history. And to be fair, the partnership is still very awkward. And basically we have become very comfortable in our tikanga bubbles where no further offences can happen. And to add to the mix, we have a third tikanga, Pasifika, or Polynesia. Into this next section, please know, and I've already said it, that some of my talk may sit a little uncomfortably with some, and perhaps more understanding for others. It's not personal. Advantages of our unique three tikanga model. We avoid offending one another. And I think, to be fair, tikanga Pakeha make more of an effort to not offend Māori, because you yourselves know how that feels. I can't tell you how you feel. But what I do know is that fear has built up that you might offend. And it exists. So having a three tikanga model means that you don't always have to be sitting in the same room. So there's less offending one another, unless we are gathered in those common three tikanga synods and committees, and there are quite a few of them. We get to talk about one another, or we get to talk about each other. I'll give you an example of something that happened when I was at St John's College. Some of the students, Māori students there, were moaning about tikanga Pakeha. Big time. I asked them, I said, why are you carrying that baggage and why are you expecting me to carry it for you? Because I don't feel the same way. I'm not going to hit them over the head with a hammer like you have been. I'm just a different style of person. And I will not carry your baggage. And I walked out. This is to tikanga Māori who were moaning about tikanga Pakeha. And I went to, at the time, Dean Jim White, before he was a bishop, and said, those Maori, now, I'm not being formed. I need to learn something new. I've come here to St. John's College to experience what it has to offer. And I know very little about tikanga Pakeha Anglicans. Gimme. Oh, what do you propose? Jim said. Well, I'd like to do my ministry formation with tikanga Pakeha, please. Oh, that's very interesting, Jacynthia. Is it possible? I'll have to have a talk with my colleagues. And at the time, Jackie Sewell was on board. Okay, but I'm willing to sit in. I really want to learn. Cut a long story short, calls me in his office about a week later. We've made a decision about you joining the ministry formation in tikanga Pakeha. Oh, yes, thinking that I'm about to start. We've declined your application. Why? And if you know Jim as well as I do, he went, because we like to talk about you guys every now and again, and we can't do that if you're in the class. You know what? I got it. I did. I understood that there needed to be space for tikanga Pakeha, for tikanga Maori. Polynesia is a little bit different. They don't have the same dynamic. I get it, that we need our own space to get through the stuff. So I was declined. So if I act too Māori for you, you can blame Jim. So we get to talk about each other in our bubbles, in a reasonably safe environment within our tikanga caucuses, synods and amorangi. We have a constitutional right to table relevant tikanga aspirations at our provincial general synods every 2 years. So you don't have to consult with Māori, you don't have to consult with Polynesia. Tikanga Pakeha can, in their runanga nui, can form their own motions and put them forward. That's another safety of the bubble of 3 tikanga. Māori are now constitutionally sitting on all 3 tikanga entities of the church with an equal voice and participation, many of which I have sat on. An example would be CLLC, which is the Common Life Liturgical Commission. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. The wonderful, very praised prayer book that we use has been put together by the Liturgical Commission. There was never a Māori on there. And it took a lot of fighting. The first Māori to go on the Liturgical Commission was Bishop Ben Te Hara. And George Connor was his mate. You know Bishop George Connor. And they were very good friends on the Liturgical Commission. It took a long time to get Te Reo Māori into the prayer book. Long time. And a lot of fighting. And a lot of hurt. Because they disregarded our language on the Liturgical Commission. Thankfully, we've come a long way. I've served on the Commission for many, many years, and I was their scribe when we've just done all the new sentences and collects, which has made the prayer book from that to that, and now it's that because it's got all the Polynesian translations in as well. From a Māori perspective, we can hope that Pakeha, I'm still on advantages. These are advantages. From a Māori Māori perspective, we can hope that Pakeha are much more willing to learn. Your coming this evening is testament to that. Much more willing to learn about our bicultural, bilingual nation of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and build that knowledge into your tikanga. I could call it a mono tikanga if you like, or if I like. Traditions of Anglicanism. So the way in which you carry out your Anglicanism is very mono. They are advantages because we're a 3 tikanga church and we're allowed. Standing resolutions, here we go. Standing resolutions on bicultural partnership in the canons, in our canons, directs us to do the following. Inclusion of the Māori language and culture in all ordination training programs. All. Would you say we're doing that?
No.
The standing resolution also says to have the view that the selective use of Māori words supports the use by English speakers in everyday speech and writing, in formal documents and in liturgical revisions when those words convey a better meaning. An example of a better meaning is in the prayer book, you've got your English on one side. This is on page 476. You've got English on the left and Māori on the right, Te Reo on the right. And they definitely are not exempt. Māori language is more poetic. We talk about things in a different way. And so it was very hard to get that through the liturgical commission, but it did in the finish. So what this part of the canon refers to is that when the Māori words convey the meaning better, you're encouraged to use it. It encourages Māori speakers to suggest the substitution of Māori words which may give a better meaning and to correct English speakers' misuse of Māori words. Some of us do it with a sledgehammer, some of us do it in a more mild manner. Some of you may know I rolled out taha Māori for 2 years in the diocese to help. Now, they were advantages, by the way. There are disadvantages too. And I've mentioned before that we are safe in our bubbles. We feel safe in our bubbles, which essentially doesn't grow us. It doesn't grow you or us in your worship, in your interaction with Māori, because you're in a bubble. It means that when I serve, preside or preach in a Pakeha parish, and I'm doing that right now, I'm expected to speak English all the time. Because I speak English and can deliver confidently in your settings. I delivered the karakia at Lambeth Conference earlier this year. Bubbles make it safe. Makes it safe to do so. Not having Pakeha speak te reo in church settings is a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage to you as a tikanga because you're choosing not to use it when you can. and it's a disadvantage to your relationship with Māori. Yeah, we understand what you're saying because we know English. We speak English. I can come into any one of your churches and deliver a service. But the canon says all trainees have to learn Te Reo Māori so that you in turn can deliver a service on a marae confidently. And that's in the canon. But our bubbles protect us a little. So not having Pakeha speak Te Reo in church settings is a disadvantage. Essentially, we have 3 chiefs. It's just another bullet point of mine. 3 chiefs in our province. They come under the title of archbishops. Whilst it boasts a uniqueness from Aotearoa, because no other province has it. I tell you, I travel the world, and they go, what's this 3? I even had the Secretary General of the Anglican Communion Office ask me that question. What is this? We are unique. So we have 3 chiefs in our province, boasting a uniqueness in the whole of the Anglican Communion. Having one Maori chief over multiple tribes and hapu is not appropriate. I'm Ngāpuhi. I don't listen to a Tainui chief. I don't listen to a Tairāwhiti chief or a Tūmoi chief. I just don't. I have my own mana, and we have our own chiefs. Just saying. Just so you get a... Do you understand what I'm saying? We are tribal. So to have one Māori chief over multiple tribes and hapu is not appropriate. I have said this publicly, not just here. However, the canons and the te pauhere allows for it. All those rules I've just talked about allows for it. Tensions within Māori have grown over the decades because of it. That might be something that you don't know exists, but it does. There's tension. Ngāpuhi have always been known as the most formidable tribe in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're very unlikely to be taking orders from another chief. Guilty as charged. So we've got some work to do with our 3 tikanga model. One of the things that I want to mention to you is the Anglican Indigenous Network, which sits in the Anglican Communion. I'm a member of the Anglican Indigenous Network and have been there for about 10 years. We join with First Nations people, Canada, Amazonia, Arctic, Africa, Australia. Indigenous Anglicans coming together to try and work through the things that disempower us in the Anglican Church. So that intersection, that crossroad, that Ripekanga is a difficult place for us as Indigenous peoples. Archbishop Justin Welby, in March of this year, went to Canada to apologise to the Inuit people for all the children they found buried under one of the schools. huge apology in Canada. One of the things he promised at that speech was that he would work, the Anglican Communion would work very intentionally with the Anglican Indigenous Network. So yours truly gets invited to the Lambeth Conference, of course, to do the karakia. But there was a whole group of us that went to Lambeth Conference, but this was in following on from his apology in Canada. I'm very sad to report that the Anglican Indigenous Network, if you weren't a bishop, and if you weren't a bishop's spouse, were not invited to the Eucharist service that was delivered by Archbishop Philip Richardson for Aotearoa, New Zealand. We tried, but we weren't invited. The Anglican Indigenous Network. So that's why I say these things are still happening today, where we're not included. We were stopped. But it was okay for me to do the karakia in the big cathedral, but it wasn't okay for me to have Eucharist with the bishops. We've got a lot of work to do. So, we have a 3 tikanga model, but that's talking about the Anglican Communion model, I know. As tikanga Pakeha, how can we be more effective in working with tikanga Māori? And what role can the church as Christians have in treaty issues? It's a big question, eh? It's tough. Any thoughts? Anything jump out at you? How can we be more effective? What do you think? I've got some thoughts. I'll share them with you in a moment. Any initial thoughts?
Education.
Sorry?
Education.
Education.
Yeah.
Knowledge is powerful, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meaningful consultation.
Yeah. Meaningful consultation.
Getting to know each other
Yeah. How do we do that?
by personal contact.
Go to each other's churches.
Yeah.
I try to encourage Sandringham to do that. Go, 2 or 3 of you go each week. It's all right, we'll still have our service here on Sunday. I'll deliver it. Go. Go to Holy Sepulchre, private pass. All the words are up there, but you've got a prayer book, you can follow the English. Go to Mangere, Te Karaiti Te Pauheringa Waka. They're the 2 main Māori churches here in Anglican Tikangas. They wouldn't go. So in order to fulfill that willingness has to be there in order to be more effective in working with tikanga Māori. But to be fair, I know you don't have a lot of Māori sitting in your pews. I know. When I first went to Sandringham, I won't mention his name, but Max might remember who he is. We had a grumpy professor there. You know who I'm talking about. And I think it was my second service. He stood up and noticed us and he said, "Why would they send someone like you here?" Like what? That's what I said, like what? And he turned around and he said, "Well, we don't have any Maoris here, do we? Why would they send someone like you here?" Needless to say that many of the congregants just put their head down in shame. They couldn't believe that he said it. Now, I didn't pull out my taiaha, and I didn't go, "Hell no!" No, I didn't. Instead, my response was, I'm sorry you feel that way. Perhaps we could have a talk over a cup of tea later. And then I cut him off really and carried on. That was my greeting in a Pakeha church as an educated Maori priest and judge. Was it effective? How could that have been done differently? I will go on to redeem him. He got to love me because I introduced the ukulele and he loved singing. And we changed the senior services on Wednesday completely. And I was the only person invited to his 90th birthday. Why would they send someone like you here? Isn't that cool? Because I never growled him, I never had a go at him. I would sit with him, I would listen to him, and I would not defend myself as a Maori. I shouldn't have to. And it was through that he realised, well, perhaps I was a little bit harsh. Maybe, I don't know. But I was invited to his 90th birthday. And even the other parishioners went, oh. And because I'm single, I went, well, has he got a big will? And they all laughed. They started pulling my leg about that. I think it would be fair to say that both Maori and Pakeha genuinely believe that resources are the answer to our treaty cultural problems. I sit at those tables too. It has been my observation that properties and money are not the solution. So if you're thinking that's what Māori want, Māori think that that's what they want too. But let me tell you, you know what? They're only temporary fixes. At the end of the day, buildings will still need to be maintained. Priests still need to be stipended. We don't have many stipended priests in Taipei, not before. And congregants still need to be present in the pews because we deliver great sermons, contributing to the coffer, as it were. Without them, no good giving us a church if it's falling over. That did happen in Carmel, by the way. We were gifted that church in Carmel while I was there. I was priest in charge. We had to spend $600,000 doing it up to compliance. I'm not blaming Pakeha for that. We were silly for accepting it. We didn't need it. But anyway, temporary fixes. What can be done with the land around your churches? Now that was brought up in a resolution. If it wasn't the last synod, it was the one before. Because you have a lot of land around your churches. What can be done that makes it effective in tikanga Māori or treaty issues? What can you do with that land? Social housing, perhaps. Wellington, the Diocese of Wellington, for instance, come up with this affordable housing, great big, huge conglomerate of a building development. Not one tikanga Māori is able to afford it. So they can come up with all the affordable housing they want, but we can't afford it. So social housing perhaps is one way that you can help be more effective in a tikanga Māori setting. How do you do that? Well, take it up with the diocesan council, I guess. But that's one thing that would mean a lot to Māori. We like community living. On our marae, we have special housing for our kaumātua kuia. They live together. They're right next to the marae, so they can serve the marae in the way they have all their life. And Māori also serve the churches. Your own people also serve the churches. And of course, more intercultural meetings with Māori, as was suggested. Having more conversations. Being in relationship with Māori. You've allowed me to come here this evening. That's one facet of intercultural relationship building. No one's walked out and discussed with me. You trust me, that's why. And I trust you. It takes effort to do that. That's my strongest advice to you, is get interrelational with Māori. One-on-one. Go to a Māori church. And it might take more than one visit. But they'll get to know you. It can't happen without it. And there are, are there any examples of effective partnership? I struggled on that one. I did. Maybe you can think of some. But I'll bring that to a close, if I may. Is there anything in particular you'd like to ask me? And I promise I won't go, Gabbo! Please feel free to ask me. Anything.
You talk about how difficult it has been and still is, and in the three tikanga model, and the difficulties for the Indigenous peoples worldwide. What do you think it is that keeps you in the Anglican movement?
I know. That's a very good question.
Why are all these people who have been treated so poorly still so invested in the model, if you like?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I haven't been asked that question before. But when I think about it, I've just had 3 funerals in the last 2 days. And when I think of the different types of models that we've had in terms of tangi, because it was Māori, Pakeha, Māori, Pakeha. Funerals I'm talking about. Now, when the Māori came to talk to me about the funeral, because they're not using marae as often as they used to. They do prefer to come to the church, particularly that generation. So the deceased are around 88, 90. They came to church. They were church people. But the kids, the next generation, are going, is it going to be like a lot of that sort of prayer stuff? And, I went, well, we have a formulary and we have to follow it. Tell me more. We do struggle with our own people. There are people that judge us harshly for staying. I'm one of them. They can't understand why we stay. I have cried publicly in General Synod because I've been so hurt. But I'm still here. I can't explain why, other than God. It's all your fault. It is. It's God-given. I could walk away. Yes, I could get back into... I was in local government before I became a minister. I could. But something keeps me here. I love people. I love empowering and enabling people to build better relationships in a bicultural way, in a bilingual way. Matariki has created a bit of a stir, just let you know, amongst the Pakeha Christians. Just be aware of that. Goes back to the paganism talks and what have you from way back.
Do you think you stay because you see some improvement occurring?
Yes, there's definitely improvement. Yeah, definitely improvement. But there's still a long way to go. And I think if I could use again the example of how comfortably I can come to any parish, anywhere in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and almost the world really, where I can preside and preach, no problem. But it's the other way.
It's the other way. Yeah.
It's only a one-way river. The water only flows one way. Archbishop Winston Halapua had a theology message for everybody called Moana theology. You may have heard of it. Depending on what size you drop into a still lake or a still pond will depend on how much the ripples go out. So yes, I could use a big rock and you're going to get a tsunami all over you. But I've already told you, it's not my style. I would rather just drop a couple of small rocks every now and again to keep the ripple going. But I can't do any more than that unless you change how you receive it, how you deliver it, what is your outward expression of a bicultural relationship. Only you can answer that. We can tell you how to do it, but again, it's got to be up to you how you roll that out. Because when we see it and when we hear it, it speaks volumes. I was down at Moku recently. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to go over my time. I was down at Moku recently. I was in local sheep ministry for a while. And Moku down there has a church that's got all the musket gun holes all around the church. I think there might be another. Is Russell right there? Yeah. Now,
And Waiuku has a gun holes too. Yeah.
Is it Waiuku? Moku.
St. Bride's.
Yeah, that's the one, Moku.
Yeah.
Moku, yeah. Anyway, so the very first time I saw that, because they were painted red and the church is white, so they stood out. And when I saw them, I went, oh, because I know what they are. I immediately felt the effects of history upon Māori the first time I saw them. Never said anything. Never said a word. I served in Moku for a while. I went down recently with my friend from the US and they had just painted it. And all the red little musket holes had been painted white. And they're still there. But the feeling that overwhelmed me when I saw that was just beyond words. And I was preaching that day in Pakeha Sunday. And I told them so. I said, you have no idea how that makes me feel, what you've done. You've painted them over so that they're not this proud piece of history that killed Māori. It's not that anymore. It's a reconciliation statement that they didn't take it away, and I don't think they should. It's part of the history. But it's not obviously in your face. Now, that did touch a couple of people in the congregation. When I talked about that, there was some sniffing and a little bit of tissues coming out. But my point in telling you that is that I had an opportunity to tell them how it made me feel. So until you actually enact something, you'll never know how we feel. If I talk about the feeling before they were painted, I never said a word. But I know how I felt until they were painted. Now, my relationship with that parish will be forever. Don't ever forget it. About how they made me feel. And so the opportunity for you is there too. What are the things that you might think, and it is a question, I can't answer. What are the things you think you can do to help make Māori feel the same way. I can't answer that for you.
I think that we as Pakeha need to understand that we have a Pakeha culture and other people, Maori, Pasifika, have different cultures and they're not bad.
Yep.
They're different.
Yep.
And so we permit each other to organise, like, I was thinking of what you're saying about the 3 tikanga, and it's like, and you were saying we're tribal. So within that tikanga, can that be arranged so that that can be taken into consideration because that is Maori culture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. And I think it is, because the Pakeha was formed so that Māori could deliberate on their own stuff, which was a safe place, really, for the entire church, because Pakeha had, in their own way, and with good intent, I truly believe, not all of it was good, but most of it was, a good intent to help enculturate Māori into a tradition. And Māori said, yeah, okay, cool, like that, yeah, lovely. But we're not there anymore. We're just not there anymore. Those days are over. Ask someone else, they might disagree with me. As I said in the beginning, depending on who you talk to, will depend on the answer. I have had very close, as the operations manager for the provincial church. It's not there anymore. There's a lot of pushback. And yeah, there's the risk that Māori will walk away. And some are still. They're not walking away from Anglican Tikangas. They're actually walking away from God. Because they don't see our behaviour as godly. I've been told that, right up to my face. And you call yourself a servant of God. Yeah, very uncomfortable. But again, those are the questions that perhaps, had those discussions. If you get a chance with another parish, with another pastorate, get together, spend some time talking, go. You can dog me. Oh, Jacynthia told us that. But I know my time has run out. And I just want to thank you very much for listening to me, hearing me. There was just one other thing that Ian asked me to mention. At Synod, Auckland Synod last year, I stood up and seconded a motion on the structure of the 3 Tikanga Church. This is at Auckland Synod. It was moved by David Hall, I think.
Yes.
You remember? I was the one who spoke to it. And it was about the representatives on General Synod who represent this diocese, the Auckland diocese, that they seek to initiate a review of the 3 Tikanga structure. Now, for some it went down like a bucket of sick, and for others it went down like, oh, okay, it's curious. And for others who categorically went, no, we're not in favour of it at all. That motion was passed with a great majority. That the General Synod representatives, these are the people that make decisions on our behalf, seek to initiate a review on the 3 Tikanga church structure. So, the 3 Tikanga structure. And some of the reasons I've offered you tonight around the canons, around the things that we think we are doing but actually we're just very happy in our bubbles. We are not going to each other's church. We are not bilingual. Some of us are. Polynesians, some of them speak 7 languages. So we're not doing that. But I don't want to by any means appear to be pointing the finger, to be honest. You're speaking 1 language. I speak 2, 3, actually. Polynesia speaks more. So somewhere along the line, and as you say, I acknowledge what you're saying. Pakeha, that's the bubble safety. Yeah, it's what that old man said to me. Why would they send someone like you here? Is that how you treat another Christian? No. Really?
No.
That's how I was treated. Albeit that I got an invitation to his mountain. I just want to play you very finally a beautiful song that was put together. I was part of the Anglican Indigenous Network for the Prophetic Indigenous Voices on the Planetary Crisis. So Matariki, as you know, is very much about seasons and what we do. Anglican Indigenous Network are very passionate about climate change and poking the church. And I'm one of those voices. But I do want to play you just this concluding song.
He honore, he gloria, he hallelujah ki te atua. He maumarongo, he atapai, he manaki ki runga i te mato te whenua. He hakaro pai, he hakaro ku, he hakaro roa ki ngā tangata katoa. Nō reira ki a tātou katoa. Te atapai o tō tātou ariki o Iukalaiti. Me te aroha o te atua. Me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake. Amen.
Amen. Nō reira e te whānau a te karaiti, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Sure.